Hello everyone, please keep yourself muted as you're coming into the webinar. You may leave your camera on or off, it's up to you. Sometimes it's a little bit easier if they are kept off, but that is up to you. But please do keep yourself muted if possible. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we kick off. This is going to be around 40 minutes. They're in, they're out. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end. Also, if something that I am speaking of or something that you see on the screen is, kind of you want to know more about it, or it kind of sparks a question in your own mind, do write into the chat as I'm going through the actual content. And I'm going to be also admitting people in, just to let you know, in case I'm suddenly distracted or look like I'm somewhere else. It's just that I'm admitting more people in, and just alerting everybody that's joining in now to please keep your camera or your speaker turned off or on mute, okay? And as I was just saying as well, if you do have questions, please continue to write them into the chat box as I'm going through the content, and then at the end of the webinar I will get a chance to go through some of those questions. So hopefully you'll find this informative and interesting, and you'll feel a sense of relief and preparation then going into your actual exam. And I'll get into the details of all that. Also, if at any point you cannot hear me or see me, but more importantly, if you cannot hear me, please do write into the chat box and let me know. I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the webinar. So if at any point you cannot hear or see me, please do alert me to that. And that's fine. So there's probably a couple of more people going to come in. We're just 2 minutes past 4 o'clock now, so I'm going to get started. Basically, this is going to do an overview of your pro and your specialist exam webinar and everything that you may need as you're preparing for that, but also more of the technicalities around registering and different things like that. So it is, there's been thousands of students through this process, so it is pretty seamless, but at the same time everybody's unique, and sometimes there are different issues that crop up. So it's important to just know there is a lot of information out there for you, and if you do have a particular issue, 9 times out of 10 it's been had before, or a student will have a very similar issue, so we should be able to help you out. Okay, so just a little overview of what we're going to talk about. Registering for your exam, the online exam, which a lot of you are still probably in the process of wanting to do exams online, opting to do them online. Even if you do have a test center near you, sometimes it's easier to actually do it online if you have commitments or children and things like this. Taking your exam, what happens if you do not pass the exam, which is very, very unlikely. I think we have an 86% or high 80 percentile of people actually passing on first attempt. So it's very, very unlikely that you will fail this exam. But in the event that you do, I will go through those steps with you, and also prepare you to make you sure that you do not fail, and things that you can do to ensure that as well. The format of the exam, revision tips, and more tips. So I think for a lot of you, you may already be familiar with the community forum, but you will have more than likely seen me. I know my name might be coming up there as Sean Kenny. He's a colleague of mine, but my name is in fact Jessie. So you may have seen me answering some of the queries in your classroom forum or on the general forum, or I may get back to you when you email in admin or tutor or assignment. Well, you wouldn't be in assignments as for PG, but if you do have kind of tutor related queries or support related queries, I would be answering some of those as well, but more so you might be familiar with me from the forum. So anyway, this is all about registering for your exam. Okay, so on around week 4 of your DMI journey, of your journey with your course, you should receive a registration email, okay, from DMI support in around week 4. And that email is kind of like the mother load. It kind of contains everything that you need and all the instructions that you need for registering for your exam. So it mightn't come, week 4 on the button. So don't panic if you realize it's Monday of week 4 and you have not gotten this email. It could be a week late, so it may be like week 4 to 6. So just to give yourself a little bit of time, if you haven't got it by around 6 weeks into the course, you can then email us at admin. I'll have the email at the end of this webinar, but you can email us and we will sort you out then as well. So do not panic if it's the Monday and you're going, I don't have this email. Also, please check your junk mail and your spam mail just in case it goes into those places as well. So you will need to create a Pearson account, and instructions on how to create your Pearson account will be in that exam preparation email as well. So I'm going to go over it briefly here, but please don't worry because instructions for this will also be included in that email. So make sure that the name is the exact same as the valid government ID that you will use to confirm your identity. So when you're creating your Pearson's account online, you need to ensure that the name you're using, so if you go by a nickname or a family name or just a different name that you maybe, you know, sign off your emails with, that's not going to cut it. You need to ensure that it's the exact same name that you have on your government ID. So that would be like your age card or your passport or your driver's license, anything that is a government form of ID. Have your candidate ID number ready. This information is in the email noted above. If you already have a Pearson VUE account for Digital Marketing Institute exams, please select sign in. So that's in the instance that you may have a leave of absence. You may have done the course and previously and not completed the exam and come back to it, or you may have failed your first attempt and you're coming back again. So you already have a Pearson's VUE account, in which case you do not need to sign in again. But it is important to kind of have, as I say, all that information around setting up your account would be in your initial registration email. Select a date and time with your eligibility period, within your eligibility period. So that's really important. As you know, you have, once you start this course, you have 24 weeks on the course, okay? And within those 24 weeks is your eligibility period. So that means that you must book your exam within those 24 weeks. Sometimes people think you have 24 weeks and then you can book your exam at the end. No, you must book it within, which is why we do recommend most students to look, if you're booking online or you're doing a test center, either way, please start looking and kind of registering and going through that process around week 16. Okay, so around week 16 of your journey, you need to be looking to do that. And the first time you sit your exam with DMI, the fee is waived. Okay, so there is no cost for that. And the voucher code, I'll show you that in a little bit where that sits, but the voucher code will be sent to you. Okay, so you will receive that voucher code in your registration email. And it should also be populated in your course homepage. I'm going to go through where you'll see that in a minute. Some of you may have already seen that voucher code populated. If it is not there yet, don't worry. You will be emailed that out to you as well, but I'll show you where it is populated. So just to reiterate, you do not have to pay for your exam fee. Okay, there is a cost if you fail and you do the exam again, but your first time you do not have to pay. Okay, so this is the online exam. So as I was saying, a lot of you will be going through, I'm just going to check. Okay, that's fine. A lot of you will be doing the exam online. Okay, and this is common because COVID, but also just because of lifestyle and how we've all kind of gotten used to being online, working, living, you know, community, everything. So this will be the option for a lot of you. So just to go through, this is basically an overview of what you need to do to register, which, as I say, that really important register email will be given to you around week 4 to 6 of your journey. But this is also kind of a technical test. So if you're doing the exam online, the last thing you want is to have a fault with your equipment. Okay, so you need to follow this kind of format to make sure everything's online or in line for you for your test day. Okay, so the PAC code. For online exams, you will need this code. It is in the email mentioned above. So similar, as I was saying before, this email kind of contains everything that you need. The email is almost like a version of this webinar, except it's all written instead of me speaking it. Okay, so this will also be recorded. I should have said at the beginning of the webinar, this is recorded, so all the information that I'm giving you, you will be able to watch back again. And likewise, this will all be written in that email that you will receive. So this is also in the DMI knowledge base in the support area of My DMI. Test your connectivity and system before you book your test to ensure that you meet the IT requirements. Okay, so before you go ahead and book your test with Pearson VUE to book your online exam, you can go through, and it shows you here, you can see that little image that I've included there. So you can go through a system test. Okay, so that makes sure that before you've even booked your test, because if you book your test for an online exam and then you realize that your system doesn't meet the requirements, you're in a little bit of a pickle. But just ensure that you're able to perform your system test, and you can do that once you're logged into your Pearson VUE account. You'll be able to perform that system test. And before the test day as well, you must complete an OnVUE system test and exam simulation to make sure that you meet the online testing requirements. So once you've booked, so you've done your performance system test. Also, I should say that the vast majority of computers, laptops, iPads should meet this system test. Okay, so this is not like a very high-tech piece of equipment that you need to be running to sit this exam. Standard PCs and laptops will pass this test. On the day of your exam then, okay, before your test on the day, you must complete an OnVUE system test and exam simulation to make sure you meet the online testing requirements. If you are registered and your system fails, that counts as a failed attempt at the exam. So that's why we kind of push and reiterate the idea of making sure that you test your equipment, that you feel confident in what you're doing, that on the day your system is good to go, your battery is loaded, your computer isn't making crazy noises, or nothing is distracting you, basically, because you want to set up the best possible environment for you to pass and do the best on this exam. Okay, so taking the exam. So we went through a little bit of registering with OnVUE, the importance of that email, online, what it takes to test your system. Don't worry if I know I'm giving you a lot of information. All of this will be repeated. It's also in the support areas in My DMI. You can also email in admin support at any time if you're confused. So everything can be repeated, okay? And nothing that I'm saying right now needs to be kind of, held in and remembered forever. So please don't feel like you need to remember everything. This is basically on the day of taking your exam. What to know on the day. So this is online exam. Delivered fully by Pearson VUE. Any technical issues on the day must be resolved by Pearson. The DMI does not have access to their system. So that's a good point, just so you're aware, if you're taking your exam and there is an issue with, the proctor, which is the person who is monitoring you as you're taking your exam, or if there's any issue with your system, because it's on a different platform, it's not on the DMI database, so to speak, it's with Pearson VUE. So because of that, we don't have access or ability to to troubleshoot those issues for you. So the issues, once you're actually in the exam, we can of course support you before that and after in those eventualities. But in the moment, you will need to troubleshoot that with the Pearson VUE support team. So as I was saying, it's supervised by a Pearson proctor. You cannot leave the screen, the screen or camera view, okay? So you have to stay in camera. Also, you can only have a glass of water, okay? Please don't bring fruit juices or Cokes or coffees, nothing like that. Clear glass of water. Also, do not have any study notes, okay? No study notes in front of you. It's not an open book exam. Nothing. Keep your desk, it's a clean desk policy. So keep your desk absolutely clean, no study notes, no fruit juices or anything like that, just one glass of water. And the results, if you're doing them online, the results will be in your account that same day. Okay, if you're doing them in a test center, you will get your results in the test center on the same day. So depending on how you're going to do your exam. Okay, so as I was saying, very unlikely. Okay, it is very unlikely that you will not pass this exam. In fact, I think if you study and you use all the resources available to you, it's almost impossible to not pass. Okay, so I think we have a pass rate, as I was saying at the beginning of this webinar, we have a pass rate in the high 80s. Okay, and a grade of 60% or higher is required to pass. You have 3 attempts to pass the exam. And after your first attempt, you will need to pay a fee. Your retake must be taken within the 24-week eligibility period. And that's why we kind of stress it's really important to start booking and planning your time, your exam period around week 16, because in the eventuality that you do not pass, you want to give yourself that leg room and that ability to rebook, okay, and book again. So that's why it's really important to have that kind of that comfort period, so to speak. If you do not pass and you need to take the exam for a second time, there is a retake fee of €60 or whatever that equivalent is in your own country, but in and around €60. What is the format of the exam? Okay, so again, some of you will be on the community forum, and if you are, you will see a lot of different topics. So a lot of the topics, most popular topics on the forum, and I'll show you a bit of them in a moment, are exam, okay, exams. So people coming on going, I just passed, I got 86%, and here are my top tips. So these are actually really helpful, and I do monitor them. I go in and I have a look just to make sure that everything's okay and it all makes sense. And most of the time people are, you know, just telling you their own methods. So some of them can say, you know, I studied the study notes, I printed everything off, I did the practice test, I repeatedly did the practice test, I did the module test. And everybody has a different method, but they are very useful to go through. I wouldn't, because there's so many of them, I wouldn't advise you to spend all your time kind of reading up how other people did it. I would advise you though to have a quick look through it and kind of go, okay, that's a little bit like me, that's kind of how I study, and decide from there that you want to base your study that way closer to the time. But don't, I think it can be a little bit dangerous if you get too caught up in looking at how other people do things or study and kind of modeling your behavior exactly like that, because you will all have different study patterns and you will all have different ways that you retain information. You're all different learners. So it's really important to kind of cherry pick the advice, so to speak, is what I'm trying to say. So the exam is 3 hours. It's 180 to 200 questions. All 10 modules are included in the exam. And I know sometimes, again, in some of those, some of the forum exam tip surveys, or not surveys, topics, some people think, oh, there's a heavier kind of reliance on Google Ads and Google Analytics, and they focus really high on these ones, but really they're spread out. So I think maybe the more technical questions, such as maybe on Facebook Business Manager or Google Analytics, can take up more time. They could just be a little bit longer. For some people not. Some people are really used to using these programs or kind of answering questions on them, so they absolutely fly through them. But it's important to know that all 10 modules are included in the exam, okay? So it's really kind of spread out quite evenly. There are no open questions. All questions carry equal marks, and there is no negative scoring, okay? All multiple choice. These are the types of questions. And also what's really important to kind of just be aware of is that in your modules, when you go to your practical exercises and you go to your module quizzes, the format of how those are laid out is almost identical to what you will see in the exam in terms of format, okay? So if you're kind of worried about, are they going to ask me like trick questions, or, you know, how are they going to lay it out? Go to your modules and go to your module quizzes. It's a really good way to see exactly how they're going to be formatted in the exam. It's also really important that you read the questions, because sometimes I think you kind of can start reading a question and go, oh, I know. But then you go back and you read it and you go, oh, they're actually asking me this. So it's really important that you read the questions. This is just a list of some of the things that they have. Multiple choice. Hotspot. Hotspot is when, let's say you have a Google Analytics. Sorry if you already know what hotspot is, but just for those who don't, you will have a Google Analytics open, and it will be featuring only a section of that. Okay, so a section of the Google Analytics. So it's almost like showcasing part of that screen. And then the question is asking you to identify what area it is focusing on, or it's asking you to ask a question on that particular part of the platform. You won't actually have to use the platform in the exam. but you do have to be aware of where the different reports, the main kind of reports, are sitting and how to use it. Okay, so it's important that you know how to use it yourself and you know what each of the things means, but you yourself do not have to use it in the exam. Okay, so matching, drag and drop, ranking and ordering. Okay, so study tips. As I say, I'm going to go through the actual platform as well, just to kind of help you guys visualize a little bit more of these, but review the lecture videos, video slides, especially if English is not your first language. It's a really good point. If English is not your first language, you know, you can use the transcripts or the study notes, and you can actually slow down the speed of speaking in those videos. If you find that the lecturers are speaking too fast or too slow for you, do turn on captions, okay, and slow down or speed up the speaking. So that's available for you as well. Understand the terminology used. So if you have been to the glossary before some of the sections, some of the wording when you first jump into this course, the wording, especially if you don't have a background in digital marketing, can be really confusing and a little bit overwhelming. So if you do find yourself in that position, the glossary is a really good place to go in your support section, and gives you the terminology breakdown, like of things like, you know, target ads, CPC, PPC, ad target group, all these different kind of wording or just kind of terminology that you might not be familiar with. Familiarize yourself with all the information on your course info tab. So I'll show you where that is also. If you are unclear on certain technical aspects, spend extra time to revise them. And again, that kind of links back to what I was saying about the glossary. Test yourself on key terms. Have someone ask you questions on the terms that are highlighted in the module lecture handbooks. Use the glossary if needed. Okay, use the practical exercises to improve your knowledge. Ensure that you have a good working knowledge of online platforms such as Google Ads, analytics, social media platforms. Again, as I was saying, you won't be asked to use them in the exam, but you will be expected to know how to. Revise the course content in sections, using the summary of each section for guidance. Write or type notes while you watch the lecture videos. Refer back to them as required. So this is more, I'm just going to go through these, and I think the email is at the end, and as I say, I'm going to go through a little bit of the platform and then we'll have a couple of questions if you want to as well at the end. So questions from the additional readings, case studies and or guest tutors, webinars won't be on your exam. So that's a really important thing. I know for some students, the DMI Sprint courses, students might think that those are included on your exam. They're not. Okay, so it only includes those 10 modules. Create your study plan of time. Create your study plan of time you can dedicate to study. Work in short bursts with breaks in between. Decide what time of the day suits you. Ensure you make time to eat, sleep, and relax. If you are tired or stressed, it could be harder to study. So yeah, a lot of the time as well, students will ask, you know, how long is it going to take me to get all this information in, or how do I decide? And really, there's no kind of set answer to divide this up. It really is doing it, first of all, that makes sense to your lifestyle, your job, you know, everything that goes on in your life, because we cannot dedicate, you know, as much as we'd like to. There will be, there's no point in pretending like nobody here is not going to have to cram. For some people, it's inevitable, and that's okay. You know, I think what's important is that you need to try your best, if you can at all, to go at this small and often, so that you are allowing yourself time throughout the weekend. If you can't do weekdays or weeknights or mornings, you know yourself when you can fit in the time, even if it is a half an hour to an hour every other day, 3-4 times a week. You may need to, coming up closer to your exam, naturally, most people will do that little bit more, and that's totally fine. Maybe at that point, it might be a wise idea to look more at the exams. Or maybe you feel like you've done the exams initially, so you go back and look at your study tips or your actual content where you feel you're weaker. So there's no set way to do it, but we do find that most students the 24 weeks that you have to prepare for this is actually more than enough. What is the feedback we get from most students. So if you can put yourself at ease and give yourself a study plan, you're kind of giving yourself the best chance for success in that way. And this, as I was saying, you see me on the forum, but also you'll see me here. Okay, so admin@digitalmarketinginstitute.com. That's your email address. If any of you, you're probably all familiar with that already, but just to have that as well is really important. So I'm just going to show you now. Okay, so when I'm in my course and I go into here, now up here, okay, for some of you, this is where your exam voucher is populated. Okay, so this is the exam voucher fee to waive the cost of your first exam if you'd like to. Okay, well, yeah, you all would like to, but that's where it will be. If in the instance that you do not pass in the first time, then you need to pay. But initially, this is where the exam voucher sits. So your course info, I do go through this a little bit more in the welcoming webinar, but I do just want to go to here just to let you know that all of the information will be, as I was saying, that I gave in the first half of this webinar, is reiterated in that email and also here and also in the support sections. Okay, so, or you can also email us if you're unsure about anything at all. So overview, format, eligibility and booking, and Pearson VUE online. Okay, reschedule or cancelling exams actually might go in there, just because I didn't speak on that one too much. So candidates are able to reschedule or cancel bookings examinations through their Pearson VUE online account. Okay, so that's going to happen in there. Any changes to a scheduled exam must be done no later than 24 hours prior to their scheduled exam. Failure to reschedule or cancel an exam prior to 24 hours before the scheduled exam time will result in a used exam attempt. No show. Okay, so just if you are looking to reschedule or cancel, you basically, it's telling you that you have to do it within before 24 hours. Okay, no later than 24-hour period before your exam. Also, there's more here on accommodations, on certification, the exam system. I did go through some of this, but just for your own self, I think some people find it a lot easier just to have everything written down. So it's a really good place to go and look through. The other thing, just in terms of the exam format and practicing the exam, I want to bring you to practice exams, which you probably have already been in, but I'm going to just showcase it for you again. Up here, the top right-hand corner is actually missed by a lot of students, and it has probably some of the most important information to your course. Okay, so your course info page that I was just in, your class forum, where you will get a lot of those tips and tricks for passing your exam, and your practice tests. Okay, so I'm going to go in here, go down, agree and start your practice exam. You can retake this. Okay, you can take this as many times as you like. And the good thing about this exam is that it shows you your incorrect answers. Okay, it showcases which areas in the modules you're weaker in. And when you know that, when you've done the exam and you're aware and you're kind of like, oh, okay, I'm not so great on the SEO side of things, or, you know, the content I'm not so sure on, and this is showcasing this for me, you can then go back into your those content modules and revise them. So it's a really useful revision tool. The other place I want to show you is the support. I want to go, if you type in here, exam prep, and I say search. Okay, exam prep area, we're gonna view, and it'll bring me here. Okay, and this basically combines all the exams together. So both the pro, which the majority of you may be in, some of you also may be in specialisms. Okay, so it's both pro and specialisms. And what that does is basically combine all the quizzes to one area. So every single quiz that you do at the end of every module are combined and all included here. So it's particularly useful for specialism students as well, because as I was saying initially, the format that you are seeing these module quizzes is almost identical to the format and how the questions will be laid out in the exam for you. And I just want to bring you may not or may be familiar with the skills test. Okay, so that's a third kind of practice resource. So you've got your practice tests, which again are here in your courses. When you go to your DMI Pro, they're up at the top right-hand corner. You'll see here, you've got your combined module quizzes, which you need to go to support, and then you need to type in here exam prep, okay? And then the third place again is your skills test. We did mention glossary, okay? So that's here. And this is going to give me a list of a lot of different types of words that you may or may not be familiar with, okay? So it's just a good place to get an overview, because digital marketing does have a lot of kind of lingo or abbreviations and different things like that. And then just to bring you back to the community forum, some of you may be already active on your classroom forum. It's a good idea as well to check out the general forum here, because that is the combination of PG, specialisms and pro. Okay, so that's everybody together here in the general forum. And almost always at the top, this is populated based on activity. Okay, so it's not based on how soon the article or the actual topic was written. It's based on how much interaction it's getting. And generally always you will see a pro exam up at the top, okay, like here. So we've got 333 comments and over 10,000 views. Okay, so it's, you know, really they're always kind of the main ones that people want to look at. And then there again is the exam prep. That's the content that I posted that on there as well, just to let people know. Okay, so I'm going to just have a quick look here. I think a person did write into the chat. And if you do have any questions, if you don't have questions now, that's totally fine. I will also post this recording in the forum. Okay, so I'm going to post this in the general forum that I was just showing you, and you will be able to ask questions in there. Underneath it, please do ask questions. They can be, particularly if you feel like your question is something that a lot of people are going to have an issue with, it's quite useful to post it in the forum. Or if it's a very personal question particular to you, please send it to that admin email I was speaking of. Okay, so I got married last month and I'm in the process of legally changing my name. My DMI account has my maiden name, but I'm hoping to have an updated government ID by the time of the exam. But things are taking longer due to COVID. Is it going to be cause an issue? No. So, Kristen, that would be a common issue. And often we'll see names in DMI, and particularly in the back end, or where we house the students' information, that is different to what they're going by now. The best thing, as long as I would stick with your maiden name. Okay, so the maiden name that you have now is the one you're registered with DMI and is the one on your government ID. Okay, so currently. So if it's in the instance that your government ID is updated before the exam, just write into us and we'll change your name, no problem. And once we've done that, you can then go ahead and book with no issues. If in the instance that the government ID is not given back to you because of COVID and many other different reasons, that's no problem. We'll stick with your maiden name because that's the one we have registered, and your government ID will also hold that maiden name. So, you know, as long as you inform us, if you do get the ID prior to your exam, just inform us and we'll update it for you. If not, that's fine. I would say you can stick then with the current ID, government ID that you do have. Where do I send my ID? Because I registered and booked my exam on Pearson VUE, but there was no place to upload my ID. So your ID, that's on your actual day of your booking, Irene, I'm pretty sure, but I will need to double check. As long as you're registered and you have booked your exam, okay, that's perfect. The actual showing your ID and putting in your details and all that generally takes place on the day of the exam itself. But what I'll do just to double check is actually email you as well. So I'm going to but I'm almost certain because you're booked and registered and that went through absolutely fine, you should have no issue. Okay, your actual uploading of your ID does not need to be done until on the exam day or closer to the exam time. but you already, okay, perfect. That's fine. If you already booked and received the confirmation email, that's no problem at all. It will just be a matter of having your ID with you on the day of your exam. But I will, as I say, I'm going to double check that for you, because just to be 100% certain. But if you have your confirmation email and you've done everything else, then it should be no problem. But if anyone has any more queries, Victoria, at the end of week 4, you're at the end of week 4 and you haven't received an email about exam. I've tried setting my own Pearson VUE using my name and my candidate number shown on my DMI course page, but says I don't exist. Okay, no problem. My email is, oh, thanks, Irene, you're very good. Okay, I'm just copying Irene's email there. Victoria, yeah, that's, you haven't, Norm, because you're at the end of week 4, I wouldn't panic about that. It can be week 4 to 6 that you receive the actual exam about your email. But because you've tried setting, yeah, the reason that it's probably not showing up for you or saying that you don't exist or not working is because you haven't been properly, it hasn't gone through on our side yet. So that's why you haven't received that email. I would just double check, first of all, your spam and those other emails, just to ensure that it's not in junk or spam or anywhere else. And if you haven't received it, then I will double check that for you as well. Did check all inboxes. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you for letting me know. I would say it hasn't, you haven't gotten it yet, and that's probably more than like what's happened there is that you haven't actually received the email yet. So it can be week 4 to 6, but because you're at the end of week 4, and it hasn't populated, I imagine your Pearson VUE voucher code maybe has or hasn't populated for you in your course homepage as well. But I'm going to check. I'm just going to make note of your name here, and I'm going to check that for you as well. Okay. Okay. Is there anybody else that has similar or having issues? If not to worry. That's a good thing. I'm glad. But for those two ladies, for Irene and Victoria, I will get back to you on those things. And as I say, this is going to be recorded and it's going to be posted in the forum. At that point, if you do have more questions, you can write it in underneath. Okay. So if nobody has any more questions, just at this moment, I'm going to end the webinar, but as I say, it will be recorded. So thank you very much for staying with me, and I hope you found this useful and helpful, and I will talk to you very soon. Okay, take care.